This was no big surprise, right? I mean, you saw how the channel started, didn't you? Of course this one had to be next, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, the astute among you did notice the Snek talks foreshadowed the next week's episode this month, didn't you? Alright, let's begin. Greetings everyone, this is the Rancher Snek, bringing you today the next installment in Monster Rancher reviews, specifically talking about Monster Ranchers Advance 1 and Advance 2. Don't worry, grouping the two together will make sense as I explain it, but both games were released in the English-speaking world in 2002. Broadly speaking, they were actually received with generally positive reviews, Advance 2 in particular, and they were both so well loved that if you combined both their Wikipedia pages, they'd run almost an entire paragraph in length. I know, with that kind of endorsement, what have you got to lose? So join me for a closer look. The overall story does vary a little bit between installments, even if there's a lot of recurring cast members between the two. But that's because both of these installments take place on Age Island, which is somewhere in the South, if the instruction booklets are to be believed, and under the authority of the Age Island Monster Association, or AGIMA. You arrive as a pretty big deal in Advance 1, showing up in the nick of time to rescue your two assistants, Aroma and Zest. Yes, seriously. Under the instruction of one Mr. Mardok, the head of AGIMA. Being a new installment on new hardware and utilizing a lot of new conventions previously unseen in the series, it does make sense they'd want to butter a newcomer up to ease them into the story a bit. You're then set loose to raise monsters and learn firsthand how worthless Aroma and Zest are. Meanwhile, in Advance 2, it's almost the complete opposite, with you waltzing into the intro as a newcomer to the sport of monster breeding, and given the blessing to work with Holly from Monster Rancher 1. She's come quite a long way in a short time, being Miss Monster Rancher cameo herself, but she agrees to team up with you and you start your ranching career in earnest. Graphically, Monster Ranchers Advance 1 and A2, I guess you might call it, are restricted by the hardware and do maintain distinct styles from each other. MRA the First actually has an art style more in line with the PS1 set of games, with full-figured pixies and a generally rounder look to monster designs. And no, that wasn't a double entendre. Whereas MRA2 happened post-MR3, and thus you have the leaner art style on your monsters. But either way, they make the sprite-based monsters work. The shading is sharp, and it gives a sense of 3D to the monsters even though it's all just 2D sprite work. Which is also saying something, as the game relies on palette swaps to identify what subbreed the monster is. This allows for a very large and very deep pool of mechanically unique monster combinations not seen anywhere else in the franchise. Seriously, I know for a fact these games get dinged because of this, but one simple convention created such a huge amount of previously unseen potential. Sure, a pixie/arrowhead may not be an ideal combination, genetically speaking, but maybe I want to raise one anyway. Ever think of that? Monsters aside, the portraits of the human characters all look really nice too, with a very simple looping speaking animation that convey the mood quite nicely. The backgrounds are still images in that same vein of backdrops used in the original Monster Rancher and convey the scenes quite nicely. If I were to gripe, and I must, or you think I've been replaced by a pod person, it's that in MRA1 in battle the backgrounds don't actually move, so your monster and your rival look like they're just kind of marching in place. Which is weird to say the least, but Advance 2 does correct this. The games look very simple, but it's a veneer that hides an incredibly deep and nuanced gameplay experience, and it still looks pretty darn sharp even with those limitations. The sound's pretty good too. Keeping in line with Monster Rancher titles of the past, the music is oftentimes a simple melody meant to be background music to keep a nice ambient hum. But I'll be honest, this is probably the set of Monster Rancher games that I listen to the music of the least. It's good, yes, but it isn't amazing, and there's not many tracks from this OST I could hum on command if asked to do so. Of special note are the battle tracks, which do up the pace a bit and take on a real energy all their own. Especially in Advance 2 when they introduce rival battles, and they tend to get distinct battle tracks all their own, or at least it sure seemed like it. It adds a personal flavor to the battle at hand and an aspect of the game I really appreciate the sound team for taking the time out for. And for sound effects? Well, they're sound effects alright. You'll hear the usual thud sound effects on the menu, the confirm, chime, cancellation, womp, but really you'll only notice them in battles. There you'll hear every punch, slash, lightning bolt, fireball, magic spell, and all the more emphasized with their own unique charm. It's quite a pleasant listening experience if you can take your mind off the high-tension battle you're currently in. Speaking of, the gameplay, as always, is where these games really get to do their heavy lifting. These games are shockingly complex when you get down to it, with a lot of algorithms and calculations processing under the hood from the moment you step into the shrine. Why is that? Well, for starters, you can't pop a CD or a DVD into a Game Boy Advance, and because the GBA would cut power if the cart was unseated from the handheld, the game instead allows you to make monsters by inputting letters, characters, and numbers, at first a maximum of 4, but eventually raising that limit to 8 characters in order to make progressively more complex and rarer monsters as you go. You can put in names, words, small phrases, numbers, complete nonsense, and more to unlock monsters of your very own. Though very large monsters like golems still require you to upgrade your barn once or maybe twice in order to house them. Once you have a monster you like, you can give it a name, take it home to your ranch, whereupon your monster breeder legend will begin good and proper. Once you're at your ranch, you'll begin raising your monster of choice, and here's where the advanced games really do stand out from other games of the franchise: the coach system. Training is done by way of having a coach monster instruct them. The stronger the coach, the better the training results will ultimately be. So you raise your baby monster up both with your guiding hand and your coach monsters, and these games have the most fully fleshed out set of training options of any game in the franchise. I sort of talked about this back in my Monster Rancher 4 review, but this is how you make proper sets of training, as Monster Rancher Advance 2 in particular perfectly demonstrates. Giving the player more choices is always going to be a good thing, and allowing us to raise up a tank without constantly having to hemorrhage our accuracy stat is a great start to it. Just about every possible combination of single stat raising training, and more importantly, training that will bolster 2 stats at the cost of a third, which goes down, allows absolute customization on your ranch, given enough time and coach monsters, at least in Advance 2. In Advance 1, these options are still somewhat limited, but give the player enough freedom to properly adjust for most possibilities in their own way. Actually, let's talk about that a little bit more before I go on. When a monster reaches the end of its lifespan in these games, it won't die, but it will reach a threshold where it's unable to gain more stats or learn new attacks, and it will suffer massive stat penalties in any fight that it attempts to undertake. So you have the option of fusing your monsters together, like in the past good installments, and now have the new option of retiring a monster to coach status. In Advance 1, there can be a coach for one particular training type, but in Advance 2, they're given a pre-assigned number of roles they can fill as coach across multiple training types. I think this might be dictated by their rank, but don't quote me on that. You can also hire on coaches from Agema to fill out your training roster, and these change I think month to month, but let's be honest, you can raise better monsters than they can. Furthermore, these coaches will also fill the shoes of the heavy training from past games. They'll act as one-on-one bouts where the better you do, the more your stats go up / the higher your chance of getting new attacks. But you'll still get something even if you lose. This means that training's more intuitive, and will grow in its potential over time to benefit your ranch as you battle with stronger coaches. The more you play, the stronger your growth potential, both for the individual monsters and for your ranch taken as a whole. I love the coach system, and I feel that something like this really needs to be strongly considered for that next hypothetical Monster Rancher installment. Speaking of, back to the ranch. Unlike past games where events were usually triggered by something you or your monster did, like having high fame or completing a certain fight, random events can happen, well, randomly. Sometimes your monster will find a random item on the ranch or be assaulted by a stray monster who will get a special tablet password you can use for future monsters. Sometimes you'll also get a little bit of mythos of the world where characters come and explain the lore. Sometimes Aroma and Zest will have a bout of emotional bathos where they whinge about their family being dead before giving you a paradoxically expensive item for literally no reason. I really don't understand the rationale behind that one. But it results in Advance 2 having a pretty strong narrative through line, as we're ultimately challenged by Canute, whatever, I've been calling him Canute since I started playing this game, I'm not going to stop now. We're challenged by a pretty boy and gain several rivals throughout the game we must overcome to become the monster champion. These are handled pretty well, in that not only can there only ever be one rival in a tournament, they aren't guaranteed to have a 100% win rate all the time, meaning that you'll still be able to make some mistakes and come out on top. And since I brought it up, let's touch on the monster battles. It's still the star of the show and our biggest moneymaker naturally. You're able to customize 2 rows of 3 attacks, corresponding to near, far, and mid distances from your opponent. Advance 1 does a rather odd break from series convention and will allow you to set any attack at any distance you want, but with the added caveat that if it's not in its proper space, it'll have some kind of trade-off, oftentimes costing more guts, your monster's energy while in battle, to execute it. This is bizarre and ultimately kind of counterintuitive, so I rarely, if ever, use it. Evidently no one else did, as this mechanic is MIA in all other games, including Advance 2. I suppose I should explain this a little bit more. When you enter battle, your guts, and that of your opponent, start at 50, and gradually tick up over time to a maximum of 99 when you're not executing attacks. The rate of this does vary by species. You expend your guts when executing attacks, which will then hopefully drive your enemy unconscious in order to take home boatloads of money. That's combat in a nutshell, really. And that's also where our discussion of Advance the First will come to an end, realistically, as that's pretty much the entire game. I'm not joking. You just climb the ranks from, well, D for some reason, as the E rank is conspicuously absent, up to S rank as usual and win the game. You'll unlock everything just in doing that. Monster Rancher Advance 2, however, peppers in quite a bit more, essentially being an inbuilt, well, advanced remake of the first. It has expeditions back where they rightfully belong for the first time since Monster Rancher 2, including a cameo from Karn, special training missions to unlock additional monster breeds by way of expeditions, tons of fusion items to get new species unlocked, and tons of new rivals, including returning challenges from Aroma and Zest, and the then brand new counter mechanic, where you have the chance to interrupt an enemy's attack with one of your own. Really, it must be said, if you play Monster Rancher Advance 2, you're basically also playing Advance 1, since it's everything it was, but more and better. Not just that, but Advance 2 has the highest total number of playable monsters in any Monster Rancher title ever, including combinations never seen before in any other game and not seen since. I suppose then I must ask, what flaws there are in these titles? While Advance 1 is a bit awkwardly paced, some breeds are just going to struggle due to the absence of an E rank, looking at you, Momo and Octopi, as jumping into the D rank is a bit of a step up. Though that is a bit of a temporary problem once you understand the game's pacing and get new coaches and ranch items. And then Advance 2 is prone to handing enemy NPCs story-driven automatic wins, even in situations where they have no right claiming them. But honestly, I'm just disappointed that there was never an Advance 3. The Advance titles are so fascinating and full of content, tons of species to collect, new and unique challenges to overcome, fun expeditions, tons of upgrades and collectibles, and more. I could gush about them all day, every day. Among the various ranching titles from Monster Rancher, these are among the easiest to bring to Virtual Console, but no one has ever made such efforts, and it demands to be known. Why not? These games are incredible. If you ever get the chance to play them, you absolutely should. They're incredibly user-friendly and will be a great starting point for people who've never played a game like this before. And that's the final word on Monster Rancher Advance 1 and 2. This has been the Hipster Rancher. If you liked today's video, tap the like button so I know. After that, you can hit the subscribe and bell icons too so you can get more content like this every week. If you just can't get enough, why not try out the Tomodachi Bros Podbean and YouTube Mirror, where I team up with my bros Kog and Ditaku to talk about anime, TV shows, and more. All links to our ever-growing array of social media buffoonery in the description of every video, every time. So feel free to drop us a line. And thanks for joining me throughout the merry month of monster games. I have had a lot of fun with this theme block on the channel's first Snekiversary. Join me here every week for more obscure games, indie excellence, Snek sweets, and more. And I'll see you there.